Yeah, right? Hi, I'm Fawn, and this is Shining Soul 2. It is an action RPG that was released in the summer of 2003 for Game Boy Advance. I am running and submitting any percent advanced, which is effectively the New Game Plus category for this game, and it is by far the much safer run for a marathon setting, in comparison to any percent normal. Normally when you start a new game, on normal, you select which class you want to be, of which there are 8 to choose from, 9 if you've beaten the game at least one time. When you start a file on advanced mode, it just uses the same character that you used in normal mode, and it skips making you watch the opening cutscene. So you get immediate control and the run kinda takes off right away. It's really nice. I use the ninja class for 2 primary reasons. The first one being that the ninja can do something called ninja is capable of doing something called the backstab glitch, which I'll go into greater detail about later, but for now, the long and short of it is that I can abuse the fact that facing in this game is really, really, really weird. And basically there's this glitch that I can abuse to do way more damage than I should be able to do. And the other reason that I use Ninja is because the Ninja has access to Speed Magic, which I just used for the first time in this run. At its highest charge, Speed Magic lasts for about 1:50, and it is exactly what it sounds like, basically. Use spell, go fast. The use of Speed Magic is actually one of my favorite parts about routing this run, and it's one of my favorite things to try to optimize, because it's not as simple as just like, oh, have Speed Magic level 7 active all the time. Because you can only use Speed Magic, like you can only use spells and attacks when you're in a dungeon. So if speed runs out while I'm not in a dungeon, I have to wait until I'm back in one in order to use it again. And ideally, that's not very good, because ideally I'd like to have speed active at all times. The way around that is if I start getting into the later half of a dungeon and my speed runs out, if I think I'm going to be out of the dungeon within the next minute and 50 seconds, I'll actually just cast a level 6 speed, because speed cannot be reset unless you... speed cannot be reset unless you wait for it to run out and then use it again, or if you use it again at a higher charge than you have it at currently active. So, by using level 6 in the later half of dungeons, that allows me to, after I beat the boss, use a level 7 quick, and it will reset it, and it'll even be faster. So it will be active for the walk back through the castle. But yeah, those are the 2 main reasons why I use Ninja. The goal of any percent advanced is to beat the 10 main story dungeons in this game, and then defeat Chaos, the final boss. You have to use a file that has not beaten the first dungeon, Goblin Fort, which is this one that we are currently in. You're able to set your file up however you want, being a New Game Plus category, in normal mode before starting. With this particular file, I use an item duplication glitch to duplicate a bunch of items that raise your stats. And so most of mine that are important to the run are basically maxed out or pumped way up, like by a lot. I also grinded in some side dungeons in advanced mode to get the best gear available to the ninja at that point. On top of that, I also duplicated a very good healing item, of which I have 20 when I start this. Part of being fast in this category is avoiding damage for the sole purpose of saving your heals. If you run low at any point, you have to stop and duplicate more, which is slow. Theoretically, you can run and duplicate them too, but that's really difficult. The duplication trick itself is a frame-perfect trick in a 60 FPS game, and it's just really hard to like run and do it and try to pick it up and keep track of all that. So usually when we duplicate, we have to completely stop, face a wall, and do it all right there. So that's slow. Now you may think, hearing all this, well, that's kind of dumb, like you're gonna body everything and it's not gonna be interesting. While you're not entirely wrong, since the bosses do become very easy and really fast to kill, the real wonder of this run lies in everything leading up to the boss rooms, to be completely candid with you. Spawns in this game are super funky. Most of the rooms in it have a gatekeeper, or a single specific enemy that you must take out in order to open the door in advance. More often than not, you'll see me run straight for the gatekeeper and take it out, and just run straight forward. Sometimes, though, the rooms are really big, and they have a lot of spawns leading up to where the gatekeepers are. That sucks, because there can only be a certain number of spawns or items on screen at a time, so they can actually prevent the gatekeeper from spawning if they're following me. so sometimes I have to clear some out just before I reach the gatekeeper. In some rooms, specific enemies are set to cause another specific enemy to spawn when killed, and sometimes the gatekeeper is at the end of that spawn quote-unquote chain, if you will. So you have to know exactly which ones to take out in order to move forward sometimes. Another part of being fast at this is having good pathing and cutting corners as tightly as you can, but that's a lot easier said than done with this game. Both you and enemies have really weird hitboxes, like super weird hitboxes. I do not have my head completely wrapped around either spawn patterns or like hitboxes. Those are two things that like I kind of understand enough to do a speed run, but if we knew more, I think we could optimize better. But there's just a lot that we don't know about that. But yeah, the weird hitboxes combined with the fact that you move pretty quickly with max level speed magic, it makes it kind of hard to maneuver through enemy mobs sometimes. The mobs closer to the end of the game in particular get to be pretty big and plentiful, and they can actually do a ton of damage to you if you manage to get tangled up with them. Yeah, those are a lot of the key points and things that things to watch out for while I'm kind of running. Being a Game Boy Advance game as well, naturally there are lag reduction strats, as it's super easy to lag this game. Typically what causes this game to lag is when there's a lot of items and or enemies on screen, and there's also treasure chests in the game, and they have this little animation when you hit them and open them. And if you hit a treasure chest while there's also a lot of enemies or items on screen, that also generates lag. So in general, throughout this run, I am trying to avoid opening treasure chests as much as I can, because I don't need any treasure of any kind. I have exactly what I need to do this run. So I don't want to pick anything up, I don't want to open anything, because it will generate lag. Another thing that would generate lag as well, if there are items and enemies on screen, enough of them, opening up either of the quick slots, like the items menu on the right, or the weapon slots on the left, opening up either of those to check anything while there's enemies or items on screen will generate lag. So I try to avoid opening those as much as I can as long as there's enemies around. Sometimes you don't have a choice. Like sometimes I have to switch, or I have to switch to speed magic in order to reactivate it. That's just kind of how it is. But yeah. So we're into the third dungeon now. This is kind of where things start to get interesting. I didn't feel too bad talking over the first two because there wasn't a whole lot going on during them. But this is where things kind of start to pick up a little bit. Wizari's Palace is a little bit funky. This room in particular coming up here, there's this weird thing that I can do. I have no idea how it works, and it's tied to the fact that spawns are weird. But I can do this, do a little stutter step up the stairs, and this rat, which is the gatekeeper, spawns before a bunch of other rats around him that are supposed to spawn first. I don't know why that happens, but it works, and it's fast. When I ran in here, this is the princess. We're here to save her right now, and we are here to also kill Wizari, who is the final, like the boss of this dungeon. I made sure to stop in front of the door without running directly into it, so that I could run into it, and then, so that I could run into it. If you run all the way up to the door when the cutscene starts, you have to back up and then walk into it in order to activate the dialogue option of, it asks you if you want to unlock the door, and you can say yes or no. And a little weird thing about this game is anytime that there's dialogue up and you have the option to say yes or no, after you select your option, you actually regain control of your character for a very, very brief moment, which you saw after I opened the door. I used that to my advantage, and I moved a little bit closer to the door. So here I know that my speed magic is going to run out within the next couple seconds. It just did. So I'm ready to activate it. Another part of being fast at this is when you are charging spells and charge attacks with your weapon. Normally what you have to do is you have to push A, which will cause your character to swing, and then you hold it so that it will start to charge and fill up the charge meter. However, if you are holding A already when you enter a room, or if you switch to whatever you want to charge and push A at the right time, your character will not swing, and it will just start charging. Which is slightly fast, and if you can do it all throughout a run and keep it consistent, you save probably a good few seconds with it. This next room will be a prime example to show off some backstab glitches. I'll explain it in a little greater detail here. The way that backstab glitches work is, what I'm doing is I'm doing a charge attack with my sword when I hit them. facing in this game is super weird. Like, who's facing forward, who's facing backwards, who's hitting who's back. It's really weird in this game. And the ninja's charge attack is this ball of light, essentially, that shows up in front of him. And your movement speed is slowed by a lot while the animation for the charge attack is happening. And the charge attack happens for a longer period of time and does more damage the longer you charge it. Which is something to note, actually, because sometimes when I want to use a charge attack, it's better to use like a level 1 or 2 charge attack, like a base level, because I don't need to do a ton of damage. A lot of the times I can just do a single hit or two with a regular 1 charge, and it's enough to take them out. And since the longer you charge it, the longer you are slowed down, it's faster to use shorter ones sometimes. But yeah, the way that it essentially works is the ninja has a skill that you can put points into called backstab, which is exactly what it sounds like. If you hit an enemy in the back, you get a damage multiplier, which at highest level, the ninja's damage multiplier for striking somebody in the back, I believe, is 3.3x damage. Don't quote me on that. It's been a while since I've dug my head into the direct numbers of this game, but I'm pretty sure it's 3.3x damage, which is very, very, very big, especially considering we have max attack. And so the game, since you can move around during your charge attack, if you run up to an enemy and you turn around and you release the charge attack and back up into them, you are facing away from the enemy and you are hitting them. Technically, your back is to them. However, the game, all it's doing is it's just checking both of you, and it's checking to see if either of you are facing away. And since you are, the game decides to apply the backstab damage. So which means that I'm doing a charge attack, which is the strongest thing that I can do, and I'm getting backstab damage with it without having to sit and run around to their back and try to jank that. It's a massive move to use in this, and yeah, even though I have the highest attack I can, a lot of the enemies in late game I still would not be doing over 999 damage to. However, I still get to because of the backstab glitch. So yeah, that's my main form of damage. A lot of the enemies, I kind of have a rough ballpark like idea of how much HP they have, and part of being fast is having to decide on the fly whether it's faster to just strike a few times, like with a standard attack, or charge up a charge attack and hit them with a backstab. So yeah, this is Fairy Spring. This is by far probably the most hated dungeon between all of the runners of this game. Fairy Spring is really weird. So most of the dungeons in this game are, you know, they're like regular dungeons. You go from floor to floor, there's an entrance, and there's an exit, and it's consistent every time. But Fairy Spring is like, no bro, I ain't about that life. And Fairy Spring, basically, you go from one floor to the next. That's kind of consistent. Like, the floors you go to, one after the other, are consistent. However, rather than simply having a consistent exit and entrance, there's just 2 points on each floor. And it seems to be RNG completely. The runners, we found no pattern to it, and we haven't been able to find any real information about why Fairy Spring is so funky. But basically what happens is there's 2 points, and either one of them can be the exit, or the entrance, and then the other one is the exit. And there's just no way of knowing when you get to the floor. So, yeah, if you see me running the wrong way at the beginning of any of the floors in here, it's because I don't know which way I'm supposed to be going, and I'm guessing. Because that is the best we can do in this dungeon. So yeah, just kind of working my way through, taking out the spawns as I need to in order to advance. A fun incentive that I want to kind of do with this, if this is accepted, is I think it would be really fun to... I would be really happy to donate $1 for every time that I whiff. Every time that I whiff a swing. And any time that I swing and I don't mean to, I think it'd be fun to donate $1 for every time I did that. I reckon we'd probably end up with about a $50 to $150 donation there. And I think that'd be fun. As far as other incentives beyond that, there's not a whole lot that I can work with. This game is pretty linear, and there's not a lot of variance to it. As long as you perform well, any percent advanced is a very consistent run, and it's very safe. There aren't many safeties that I will have to take, in general, being in a marathon setting, because the biggest safety of them all with this run is simply knowing how to duplicate your heals. Because if things get really, really, really dicey, you have to stop and you have to duplicate heals, because if you run out, it's run over. because the fact that you have heals and can duplicate them is the reason that you can get through the run in the first place. It's the reason that you can survive, and yeah. This is Cleone. She's this weird fairy thing. I don't know. We're gonna bust her up real good. The backstab for this one is kind of funky too. I get into this little niche here, and then I just kind of back up into it, and for some reason, like, that bottom left corner is the front of Cleone. I haven't really tested it on the right side. I don't need to, because Cleone goes to the left first, so. But I would reckon to guess that on the right side, kind of on the bottom as well, that would probably work for a backstab glitch. But yeah, that's part of getting used to the backstab glitch, is figuring out, like, what is the front of all of these bosses and enemies. Because being an isometric game and all of that, like, as far as, like, how it looks, it can be really, really hard to tell sometimes, like, what is the front of this enemy? Like, yeah, that was Fairy Spring, though. It's probably the most annoying dungeon in the game, as far as the dungeon itself. The enemies in it aren't too bad. I would say that Chaos Castle, one of the last dungeons, is the worst as far as the mobs that you face and the enemy spawns that there are. There's just so many, and it gets kind of nuts at certain points. So we're moving on to Robert's pirate ship here. This is the 5th dungeon. We're starting off, there's some guy in a crate here, and he's yelling about something. I don't know. We're going to go let him out real quick. And yeah, after I hit the box, I still had control for a little bit before this cutscene started, so I ran in front of the door, because he's going to come along and open that up, and then I'm going to want to run into it. So taking advantage of that little window, I can get right in front of it so that I can enter quicker. Yeah, this dungeon's relatively straightforward. Just gonna work my way through. Gonna try to work my way through the mobs. The next floor is kind of a notorious one for me. There's right away at the beginning. I frequently like to hold up because I can't remember which way that I'm going, and I forget which room I'm in. This time I managed to remember. But a lot of the times I'll go behind those barrels that you saw right as I entered the room. It's a frequent thing that happens because I kind of space on it. It's kind of easy sometimes to forget, like, which floor is next. Just because some of them are kind of shaped very similar. And, like, I don't know, the ordering of it just kind of gets foggy in your head sometimes if you're not playing this constantly, which is really hard to do. Because this game can be very annoying. But yeah, there's a special little walk that I did here to try to completely avoid spawning a cluster of enemies, and I got it. And because of that, I was able to run ahead and just spawn the gatekeeper right away. If that had not worked, it would have been significantly slower, and I would have had to clear out a good number of the enemies, probably about 7 of them, in order to get the gatekeeper to spawn. So I would have had to go back and shoot those archers and take out some of the other spawns that come in. The ones that I prevented from spawning, essentially. Here, I take them out in order to clear up space so that all these guys can spawn. And this is the gatekeeper here. And we move forward. This room is very straightforward. The gatekeeper is already at the end over here, no matter what you do. So, kind of just run up to him and smoke him. And he's, miraculously enough, he's facing away, not doing anything. So I can just run up and hit him in the back and get the backstab damage normally. I kind of ran up against them while they were spawning to try to pull the lower one up before trying to pass them. Because if you just try to pass them while they're spawning, they actually are blocking the stairs. So I need them to move first in order to get past. A lot of the times, running along narrow corridors like this, as long as the enemies are not right up against the wall, you actually can run against the wall in a diagonal formation. Like, you can run diagonally against the wall, and you can slip right past them. Even if your sprite is, like, not... Even though it's not, like, big enough to fit in there. I don't know, it's kind of weird. Here, I took the scroll out because it ran out, and by hitting the grave, I opened the door, and I also started charging my speed. So kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. If I had run up to just hit it and then switch to do speed, there would have been a lot of lag generated because I would have been opening my menu while there were a ton of spawns around me. So that was a big lag reduction thing there. Typically, I try to enter this room about sub 20. That's about the line for a good run. So this run has a super, super good early game. Very, very good. I don't know that I'm going to be able to top this early game without taking a magnifying glass to this run and figuring out exactly what I can do better. This whole run was very solid. So Roberts, I'm going to heal quick, and then I'm going to strike at him and start charging an attack. He's going to do a spin that's going to pull me in. I'm counting 12 of his swings, and I'm going to back up. I released a little bit early there, but it was okay. I still managed to back up into him and start dealing backstab damage quick enough before he started getting his next attack off. So that's what's important, and I got it. So, but usually what happens is that attack, that spinning attack he does, will pull you in. And so what I'll normally do is I'll count 12 swings, and I let go a little bit before the 12th one, and he'll start pulling me in, but he'll stop swinging before I get hit by him, and then I can just let go of A and back up into him and deal the backstab damage. It's a pretty shiny little strat. I like it. Feels comfy. This is Squid. I don't know why he's here. He's just here. He's here to wreck the boat, and we're like, no, man, don't wreck the boat. And then we hit him a couple times, and we're good to go. There's no way to inflict backstab damage on that boss. You straight up have to just swing home and do it as fast as you can and try to keep up with the swaying motion of the boat. It's like this weird balance of trying to make sure you're keeping up with him because he's moving left and right, and also trying to make sure you're in the right spot so that the swaying of the boat doesn't pull you out of range to hit him. It's a really awkward fight, but I've done it enough at this point. I'm just super used to it, and that was honestly really good execution. This is Dry as Heck Desert. You heard that correctly, Dry as Heck. That's D-R-I-A-Z-H-E-K. Heck. So I have to take out these worms here in order to let these mushrooms spawn. Otherwise, there's too many spawns on screen. And yeah, I take out that white one, and then we move forward. This one, the exit's already open, so I am just gunning for the end here. This half-point boss is super easy. It's like a little snaky guy that sits and bounces around the ring. I can use the charge attack normally as he's passing to hit him in the back and deal backstab damage. And yeah, this was a really good fight. This room is just hold up, basically. I want to pretend that that was a nifty little spawn manipulation movement I did there, but I actually just forgot which room I was in, and I straight up ran the wrong way. So my speed should be running out soon. I believe it runs out after I advance into the next floor. So I'm going to be switching to it and trying to not swing, which I did. I succeeded in not swinging, rather. And this is a chain of enemies, a specific one that I have to kill in order to get that purple one to spawn so that I can open the portal and advance. This one is just run right. There's a funky little movement we'll do at the end to avoid this Titan, because if we don't do it, he'll actually go down when you get close to him, and he'll block you off from entering from that side unless you try to do something funky to get by him. So this one's just kill all the mushrooms, go forward. Right there was the same thing. I'd say most often, Dry as Heck is the place where sometimes I will just straight up forget which floor I'm going into because they all look really similar and kind of feel really similar. And there's no hard ways to remember, like, which one's next. Or rather, I haven't figured out any hard ways. Like, I don't have any methods or, little chants that I do or anything to try to remember. But one of these days I'll probably do that. And we're closing in on the end of the dungeon here. So yeah, we're getting to the point where the dungeons are starting to get a little longer. I'm using a couple of speeds per dungeon clear, and I'm having to think more about where I'm using my speed in order to optimize on its being active. This is Oswald. General Oswald is one of the easiest boss fights in this game. I do not even have to backstab glitch him. He, when you get close enough to him, the first thing he tries to do is he enters this animation where he swings his sword and he stands there for a few seconds while an attack of his starts to engage. But if you run past him and just run over to his back and start hitting him in the back, you can kill him really, really quickly. And it's that simple. That's the fight. I told you, the cool parts, honestly, is it's everything leading up to the boss fights. Some of the boss fights in the later dungeons are kind of cool, but it's definitely, the cool part of this run is definitely optimization of movement through the dungeons, and that's my favorite part about routing it. Figuring out speed magic usage, pathing, all of that. It's really spicy, and it's really cool. And with spawns being the way that they are, it adds a little bit more fulfillment to manipulating them correctly. Because they're so weird, and it feels nice when things go right, because things can go wrong in this game so easily, so quickly. Like, typically, when things start to fall apart in this game, things start to snowball fast. Very fast. Next up, we have Cold as Heck Cave. Yes, that is correct. Cold as Heck Cave. That's Koldazhek. And I actually am switching. I am now using the second sword in my inventory for this dungeon because everything here is weak to fire. Therefore, I use my fire sword. Pulling all these guys over so that I can take them out, and then the Yeti spawns, and I can advance. A lot of this dungeon is hold right. Yeah, a lot of this one's a hard one to like forget which way you're going because most of the time you're just holding right when you enter. And it's a pretty linear dungeon. Like, you're running past a lot of enemies straight through to the end a lot of the time, so you don't frequently have to worry about clearing out spawn queues, or clearing out spawns in order for the gatekeeper to spawn. Right here, that's the princess. We have to save her again. After we beat these Yetis, we can break her out of the ice block. She basically counts as an enemy. She has 600 health, and after you deal 600 damage, she breaks out of the ice block. However, we can leave before doing that, but we have to break her out of the ice block in order to advance in the next dungeon. So, there's actually a cutscene skip that Dark Kobold used in a TAS, in any percent TAS. Shoutouts to Dark Kobold, it's a really cool TAS. And he does the cutscene skip in that TAS, and I decided one day, oh, I bet you I could humanize that, try it out. Did some testing, and this is the result. You throw a bomb at it, which has a fuse, and if you leave just barely before the dialogue starts, after the bomb blows up, you actually... It counts as her being blown up, like the bomb explodes, it does the final damage and it breaks her out, and the dialogue technically starts, but you're already on, you are already on your way out of the dungeon. So it counts as breaking her out, and you get to skip everything that she says, which is about 40 seconds of dialogue. So it's super hyped that I got that in this run, and so far my marathon accuracy with that trick is 100%. I've only done it once in a marathon, so that's only one time. However, that's still 100%. And I hit it during this run, too, which was actually, believe it or not, the first run of the day that I tried to do today. And it's D-Rust, technically. Yeah, this was a D-Rust PB, which I am happy about and surprised by because the run that this beat was by no means a bad run. I spent plenty of time grinding this run down to be the 55-50 that it was before this run. And, yeah, it was a good run, honestly. But this run, I don't know what it was. I was on it, though. Here, I gotta kill that Yeti to kill this Yeti to kill this Yeti. And then I can advance. I had a little bit of trouble with my menu swapping there. My muscle memory always wants to tell me to go to the first sword, and I forget that I want to use the fire sword in here half the time. This is Vitaly. Vitaly has the potential to be one of the biggest, he's a run killer, basically. He has the potential to be one. I have a manipulation that I can do for him. Anybody can come up with a manipulation for it. If you kind of do the same general movements during this fight and do the same general attacks, Vitaly will do the same general things, but that's easier said than done by a long shot. I missed my manipulation in this one. And basically the way that it works is Vitaly has 3 legs that you have to take out before you can start taking out his head. And his head is how you kill him. Sometimes, but he sits and he spins and he changes the angle at which you can see his legs. And so if he decides to be mean, sometimes you get to that last leg and he decides to just not show it to you for a very long time. And you can just lose a ton of time to RNG. But Vitaly was not super mean to us here. I missed my manipulation, but it was only about 1 extra round. So this fight was honestly just fine. It was completely okay. Happy to have a run with a Vitaly that only goes 1 extra round. 1 extra round beyond what I wanted to, essentially. So yeah, that was a very, very good cold set. Got the cutscene skip and got a decent Vitaly fight. So from here, we're moving on to Demon's Tower. There is a door at the beginning of Demon's Tower, the very first room that is closed, and it has a password. If we did not clear Camille out of the ice block in Colisette Cave, we would not know the password to that door, and we would not be able to go into this dungeon after entering it. But because we did break her out, technically, wink wink, we know the password and we can go inside. Yeah, a little bit of dialogue here. So there's 2 different kinds of text in this game. I haven't talked about this, but most of the text is like this. It scrolls on its own, essentially, and there isn't a whole lot that you can do to influence it. However, you can mash A during these types of text boxes, and every time you mash A, it actually causes whatever character is printing to finish printing. So you can kind of influence it. Like, you can sit and mash A during these parts, and over the course of an entire run, if you mash well, you might save a few seconds. Which is something. It's still, I still do it during runs because I want those seconds. Any percent advance is getting to the point where I'm starting to have to get very creative to reap as much time save as I can in order to PB. Because the record is good. It's very good. You don't have to kill this guy. It's kind of nice. You literally just have to run up to the door and just say the password and you can advance. They have that whole talk about how, like, she builds him up to seem like he's this awesome soldier of hers, and she, you know, was like, yeah, you go get him, kill him. And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna get him. And you kind of just run right past him and advance. I run down here to despawn some of the enemies further back to clear up space so that I could spawn the gatekeeper here. That swing was a mistake. I just wanted to take the scroll out and I wanted to hold A during the transition, but I made a mistake. And here I get a little bit tangled up. This is a really good example of showing you, like, how crappy the enemy mobs can be sometimes. Sometimes they just like to bunch up in a way that makes them kind of hard to get past. Here I keep my distance from the gargoyle, who is the gatekeeper, in order to prevent myself from opening the treasure chest and generating lag. Right there, a grenade can randomly fall on you. That's fun. You lose a second just because the game is like, huh, screw you, buddy. Doing a really good job in this run on not taking damage. Playing very good, very, very evasively. Coming up here is actually one of the safeties that I would take for a marathon. Normally, I would try to run past these electric guys, these little robots, on the floor, because they use electrical attacks, which have a chance to stun you, and being stunned in this and being frozen in this game are the 2 worst things that can happen to you. Being frozen just slows you down significantly. Which, of course, we don't want because we're trying to go fast. And stun, I would venture to say, is even worse because it stuns you and prevents you from moving altogether. Which, against electrical opponents, they can actually sit and stun lock you if they manage to successively hit you. So, one of the safeties I'll be taking in a marathon setting is I will actually be killing those 2 that I killed previously, rather than trying to run past them. So that, just to prevent myself from getting stun locked and losing too much time. I'd rather take them out and just take the loss there. Here I made a mistake, and I actually started running diagonally at one of the points, which you cannot stop running straight here, because if you do, one of those ghosts will hit you with an electrical attack. And I'm lucky that they didn't stun lock me there for longer. Normally, if you just run straight past them, nothing wrong can happen. You end up being too far away from them once you get past them in order for them to hit you. But I made a mistake there. Coming up here is the clone fight. Clone is basically one of the hardest fights in this entire run. Because the way that clone works is clone has all of your stats except more. Clone has, I believe, 120 more attack than you. I would not quote me on that. Again, it's been a while since I've looked at the numbers exactly. However, I'm pretty sure it's 120 attack, and he has a little bit more defense than you too. And he has everything that you have. If you saw, he did over 300 damage with that one hit. Just a regular attack. Luckily, he swings very slowly, so if I can move quickly enough and efficiently enough, I can get the backstab off on him, and I can clean him up no problem, which is what happened in this run. And I'm thankful for that, because Clone can sometimes get a little bit out of hand. And I would say Clone is the one place in the run where you are most likely to eat up the most of your heals in one sitting. Because Clone straight up does several hundred damage per hit, which, you know, we only have a little bit over 1,000. Even though the maximum up there says 999, we do have a little bit over 999. I'm not exactly sure how much, but it's not by much either, but it is over 1,000. On top of that, when you see me damaging enemies and it says 999, I'm most likely doing more damage than that. There is no damage cap as far as I know. You can do thousands and thousands of damage, it just can only show 999. So, yeah. This is the Dark Angel. You saw her kind of at the beginning of the dungeon. We worked our way up to her, and now she's talking smack, and she wants to fight us. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna fight her real good. This fight is super easy. You kind of just run to the bottom, wait for her to come down, and then you backstab into her. Easy peasy. Like I said before, you know, the boss fights are kind of lackluster, but no biggie. Not every part of the run can be a zinger, right? I don't know. I still think the boss fights are interesting, personally. It's still fun that the backstab glitch even exists, and that it's something that I can even do. Because if it was not, the boss fights would be a little bit different, because you would not have quite as much of the crazy amount of damage, or the DPS that you do, with the backstab glitch being available to you. So yeah, that was Demon's Tower. We're now moving on to Hot as Heck Volcano. That is Hottazhek, Heck. Yeah, this is a really easy dungeon. It's very, very linear. Most of it is hold right, or upright. We do meet a certain character here for the first time, who, if you remember before when I talked about starting a new file in this game, when you first start out, there are 8 characters to select, or 8 classes to choose from, essentially. However, when you beat the game the first time, this guy, Gillespie, actually becomes available to play as a playable character. Right now, he functions as a boss for us that we have to fight several times, actually, from here to the end of the game. He's just this dark wizard going on his way. He's full of himself. He likes to fight, so he's just like, hey, you want to fight? And you're like, eh, I like to fight. And so we fight. And that's our story. I kind of try to juke him out there to make him miss that little swing that he does, because otherwise all I can do is just start charging up and just go up and face away from him and hope that he doesn't hit me. And if he does hit me, he cancels out my charge and I have to start up again. So I like to do a little juke there to try to make him miss and then back up into him. Here I know that my speed magic is going to run out very soon, so I switched to it and I am holding A now so that I can be ready to use it as soon as possible. Here, I use the fact that I can run up against walls to slip past enemies a lot. I abuse that very hard in this dungeon. Like, it doesn't really look like I'm supposed to be able to slip past a lot of these enemies, but because they're not directly up against the wall, I am able to run up against the wall and slip right by them. Kind of making my way through. Run right, run right. That's what most of this dungeon is. Here, the door is already open, and there's a dragon that's going to spawn on top of it, but if I move right, I can slip right inside before he even spawns. Here is Gillespie 2. This is even easier than Gillespie 1, because he lets you have a free shot at the beginning of this fight. He's basically talking a bunch of smack, and he's like, yeah, I bet I could beat you. I'm going to let you even have a free shot. And so we're going to take advantage of that and fully charge up a backstab glitch, and we should be able to take him out super quick with it. So yeah, most of those hits were doing over 1,000 damage. Again, this is a super good pace. This run is super solid. All the way up through the end. So far, only thing that honestly could have been better in my opinion, or at least better enough to yield a significant time save of any kind, would have been Vitaly. If I'd gotten the manipulation, I could have been a little faster, and that's essentially it so far. I guess some of the movement in some of the dungeons could have been a little bit better, but it's hard to even say that. My movement, for the most part, so far is very good in this run, up to this point. Here, we kind of hit that guy, hit him up into the wall, and we're standing right on top of the stairs already, so we just exit. And we made sure the last time that we used speed to activate level 6 because the boss doesn't talk very much, and we actually get to leave really fast after he stops talking because it's a really quick fight. So I'm gonna reactivate speed at level 7 because it wouldn't, if I would have used level 7, it would have ran out. Or it would not have run out before we left, and it probably would have ran out during the walk to the castle, so. So there we reset the speed and we continue moving forward. And doing that will allow us to have speed for the castle walk, which is a little bit extra time saved. Alright, so coming up we have Chaos Castle. This is the final dungeon of the game before the final boss. Chaos Castle, I mentioned it before, but Chaos Castle is, I believe it is the hardest dungeon in the game. Rightfully so. I mean, it's the last dungeon, you know, of course, they made it kind of hard, kind of beefy. What makes it really hard is just the fact that the mobs are very big, and a lot of these enemies have the ability to use darkness spells. And darkness spells are really, really annoying. When they hit you, they kind of black you out, and they lower your accuracy by a lot. Which isn't a giant deal in advanced mode because I have max dexterity, but it still affects it enough, I would say, to, you know, make me lose time, which I don't want to do. So I try to avoid all of the dark attacks that get shot around, like the plague, because that is the worst thing that could happen to me in here. And other than that, some of the mobs also straight up are just very, very big, and they suck to deal with because they generate a lot of lag, and they make it, you have to think kind of hard to figure out, like, alright, how do I maneuver around this and not get bodied by this mob that's trying to swallow me whole? Still trying to do as many backstabs as possible. Now we're doing a lot more level 2 charges because a lot of these enemies have, they're starting to have a lot more HP. So I need to do more damage. This is one example of a room that can get particularly nasty, and it kind of starts to here, but I managed to pull it through quick enough and not let it get too out of hand. This room sucks, but I nailed it in this run. Super well. I want to clear these two out. I want to slip past all those guys and clear those two out to make room for this guy, backstab into him. If you miss any of that little bit when you're approaching the end of the room, it starts to get really ugly because all of those vampires can dark attack you, and they're very accurate. This room kind of had the potential to get a little dicey, but I managed to pull it together. I got hit by one of the stuns there, which wasn't supposed to happen, and those 3 angels that were on my tail all had electrical attacks. So they were gearing up to, like, basically bully me and stun lock me. So luckily I got out of there before that happened. But yeah, my pathing and my backstabbing, very good in this run, in this particular in Chaos Castle, and it's so important in this part of the run because everything can fall apart in this dungeon if you even make a couple of mistakes. If you start getting hit by dark attacks very frequently, things just get so out of hand so fast. Here we have Gillespie 3. This is the half-point boss of this dungeon, essentially. And this is the final time we will be fighting Gillespie. Here he's basically waiting for us, and he's like, look, fine, I'll go serious, okay? You want to fight? And then you're like, I guess, sure. And then you fight, and that's your story. So much like the first time I fought him, I'm going to kind of do this jukey thing, because what he's doing differently now is he's shooting dark attacks, and he's also trying to spawn enemies every now and then. So I'm trying to juke his dark attacks so that he doesn't hit me with them, and then I'm trying to back up into him. And I executed this fight flawlessly. You can't ask for it to go better. I managed to take him out before he got his second dark attack off, which I was just standing there ready to get hit if I wasn't hitting fast enough. Because if you don't swing fast enough after getting the backstab off like I did, he will get another dark attack off and he'll hit you from behind, which potentially can hit you out of the range of the back attack, which means you'd have to charge up again and then move back up into him again. This is a fight that can get out of hand. This is another one that can get out of hand very quickly if you allow it to. But I executed very well this time. Speed ran out as well, so I'm trying to recharge that. I don't have to worry about doing level 7 because after you beat the final boss of this dungeon, there is a very long dialogue. And you could probably activate level 7 before you even entered the fight, and it would still run out before you left to go to the castle. On top of that, when you do return to the castle, this is the final dungeon. So when you return, you talk to the king and queen for several minutes. And reminder that the speed magic only lasts for about 1:50, so it's useless to even try to have speed active when you leave this dungeon, because the king and the queen talk for so much. So this is Deathheart. This is one of the last boss. This is the second to last boss. In normal mode, well, I guess in general, because with the story of the game, I've kind of been talking about the story of this game because it's, in my opinion, it's not very good. This game is very tacky, and it's kind of tacky to the point where it's just like annoying and weird. However, playing in Japanese, I don't speak Japanese. I suppose I haven't brought that up. I'm playing in Japanese because many games where you play in Japanese and it's faster. It's faster because Japanese is a more sparse language than English. You can say more with less characters, which typically means less text overall. In this game, it's kind of weird. You essentially have the same number of text boxes that come up, so it's not that much faster in that sense, but the text itself scrolls much faster. So because of that, it's faster to play on Japanese than any other version. But yeah, I keep away from talking about the story too much because it's really not that great. But this is Deathheart. Most of why you're going through these dungeons is to find this man. At the beginning of the game in normal mode, when you're watching the cutscenes, Deathheart is you're actually a wandering traveler, and you come across Clantal Castle, which is where I've been going to every time I beat the dungeons. It's where the portals are taking me, and it's where the king and queen are that I'm talking to every time I beat a dungeon. And Deathheart here is basically their top guy, who at the beginning of the game, you show up at this castle because they're holding this tournament, right? And you're kind of sparring with Deathheart, and all of a sudden this guy comes running, and he's like, "Oh, somebody stole the princess. Somebody must save her." And, you know, more or less the king and queen ends up approaching you like, "Hey, can you go save my daughter? You're pretty good." And you're just like, "Yeah, okay." And they also send Deathheart out to go find her. However, Deathheart ends up not coming back. And we come to find, when we get to this point in the game, that Deathheart has fallen to the dark side, essentially. And so here, after we've defeated him and freed him from the grasps of evil, we're just kind of talking with him, and he's kind of taking his little final breath here. He's telling us, like, "Come, my child, don't fail them," basically. And, yeah, when you're playing through this casually, this is the point in the game where they lead you to believe, like, "Oh, yeah, cool, this is the end of the game. I did it. I feel real good right now." And, lo and behold, it's not but a false sense of security, as you will find out. Here, after the dialogue goes down, I try to do a couple of dupes just while I'm waiting for the portal to open up, but I fail all of them. Which is completely okay, because I did a really good job not getting hurt in this run, and I actually, finishing up Chaos Castle with 13 heals is huge. That's very good. I'd say on average, I tend to run myself down to at least 10, which is still very good. That's still a really good average, and that's still a lot to have when you get to this point in the game. Like I said before, one of the big parts about being fast in this run is not taking damage so that you don't have to stop and duplicate at any point, which I did not have to at any point in this run. It's super nice. I kind of just tried to while I was waiting for the portal there, just because there's nothing else you can do there to take advantage of the time. So yeah, here the king and queen, they're talking to you, and they're basically like, "Hey, you did it. Like, everything's awesome. You're our hero." And you're like, "Yeah, cool, thanks." And they're talking about this big old party that they want to throw. And so they essentially tell you to go to the tavern and talk to the barkeep, and yeah, that's basically what this conversation is, except it's dragged out over several minutes, so. In a marathon setting, this will be a pristine time to read donations and things like that. Honestly, there's a couple times that are great to do donations. This game's got plenty of windows for that. I've kind of been jabbering for most of this run, but there's a lot that I just don't have to say. Most of what I have to explain in order to understand the run is out of the way in the beginning, so there's a lot of opportunities to read donations and stuff during this run. Alright, so they're done talking. We're gonna go up. We have to talk to the barkeep to kind of say, "Hey, what's up, man? What's going on with this party?" And he's like, "Oh, I'll get it all set up. You just gotta go tell the king and queen to get down here." And so you're like, "Okay, I'll go tell the king and queen to, go do that." La-di-da-di-da. And we're working our way up to the throne room, Everything is cool, everything is jive. But then suddenly it's not. The king and the queen are gone from the throne room, and the crystal ball that's been slowly turning black over the course of the game is now flashing black and white. So we return to the bar to let this guy know about it. We kind of tell him, like, "Hey, the king and the queen aren't there. Then, the ball is acting really weird." And he's like, "Oh, by God." And he runs back into the back of the tavern and tells you to follow him, essentially. And it's kind of funny because we never talked to the barkeep even once in this. This is the first time that we do. And he ends up being a really, really pivotal character in the story, because for some reason, in the back of this tavern of his, he's got a, you'll see in a second here, he's got this weird little portal? And, oh yeah, she follows us too. You don't know her because we never died at all, but... But yeah, this is Chaos. He just kind of has this weird portal that goes to Chaos for some reason. I don't know. This is the final boss. Basically, throughout the course of this game, we have been throwing the balance between light and darkness completely out of whack. And because of that, Chaos thrives and eventually thrives enough to manifest. And so we have to take Chaos out in order to restore the true peace to the world. There's a strat I can do here where I try to backstab into Chaos, but I try to backstab into a certain specific spot. Because if I do, Chaos will do this thing where he turns into a puddle in the ground and juggles me. And if I'm in the right spot for it, he'll actually spit me right back out, and my back will still be touching him, and all I have to do is swing normally, and I'll get backstab hits. Here, I do it one time, successfully. I try to do it again, but it doesn't work. I accidentally am out of the range, so I just turn around and hit him normally. And that is the end of the run. That is where the timer ends, at final hit on Chaos. Yep, this was the first run of the day that I attempted to do today, and it is a D-Rust run. I've only been back for a couple days now trying to do this in preparation for RPG Limit Break, and I PB'd by 38 seconds this morning. It felt incredible. This run is very solid, and I think it's really cool that I PB'd like this on a run that I'm making a presentation for. Oh, talking over myself.
Fun fact, that was a PB. I just PB'd.
So yeah, that is Shining Soul 2, any percent, New Game Plus. There are not a ton of incentives that I could do for this. There is one in particular. We could save Boken in the second dungeon. During the halfway point, there's that cutscene where there was a couple mummies talking, and we ran right past them. What the cutscene is, actually, is if you go up and you just kind of wait without crossing their line of sight, they'll pull this gravestone out of the way, and, the first guy that you talk to when you start a new game, his name is Boken. He's this traveling merchant that you talk to, and he's a really cool guy, and he kind of teaches you how to play the game, you know. He's like, yeah, press A to swing, use the D-pad to move. I don't know what any of these things are, I'm just a merchant. But yeah, he kind of teaches you the game, and you actually find out that he dies. You find him in the second dungeon dead, and you can save his life by letting the mummies pull the grave out of the way, grabbing his soul, and throwing it at him when you come across his body. We could do an incentive to save Boken. It wouldn't lose me that much time, so I think it'd be a fun thing to go for. But other than that, there's not a whole lot that could be done as far as incentives with this game. As I said, I would love to donate $1 for every swing that I miss and every whiff that I make, because it happens all over the place. It's super easy to just like be a little bit short or a little bit past like a portal or like an exit somewhere and just randomly swing. And it's super easy to... It's just really easy to overswing to, like, do one too many hits because the enemy already died after the first 2 or 3. So I think it would be fun to do something like that. But yeah, thank you for your consideration of this run of Shining Soul 2. I hope that you enjoyed this presentation, and I hope that I hope it's a little bit appealing, and I hope that I hope that you want to have this run in the marathon. I think it'd be a lot of fun, and I think it'd be a cool experience for not only myself, but for the game and the game's community. Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Fawn. Yeah, thank you. You're real great, and I appreciate you.